can't believe I'm saying this, but Apotheosis Veil might actually be the new damage meta for Well Warlocks. They buffed this exotic this season, season 23, by giving it an infinite grenade, melee, and class ability energy for 8 seconds. After super activation, it will get full health instantly. But we're not going to be worrying about that health bump instantly, since we're going to be using Well for the super. This exotic is tied to your super, so you could utilize switching exotics, especially for solo flawlessly in a dungeon, or being optimized in a raid. But for all those who don't like switching their exotics so often, their build so often, here's a good build you can bring right into boss DPS, whilst using it for ad clear as well. We're using the Well super with this build, and going to try and build around regenerating our abilities, and then get us more super energy from that. For survivability, we went with the Healing Rift. But for more grenades and melee energy, you could use a Phoenix Dive, which I'll explain why with our fragments. We went with the Celestial Fire melee and the Fusion Grenade. Both of these we're going to be spamming with our exotic to get the maximum range damage. For aspects, we went for Icarus Dash and Touch of Flame. Icarus Dash is just for movement purposes, and Touch of Flame is for the extra damage with our Fusion Grenades. Since with this aspect, our grenade, the Fusion Grenade, will explode twice. For fragments, we went with Ember of Ashes. This increases our scorch stacks by 50%. And then we have Ember of Searing for more melee energy when defeating a scorched target, and this also spawns fire sprites on scorched kills. Then we went with Ember of Benevolence. This is the main one for this build. This fragment gives us more grenade energy, more melee energy, and more class ability energy when giving a buff to an ally. This being Restoration, Cure, or Radiant. So with this, you could use the Phoenix Dive, which grants Cure to nearby allies. So for damaged faces, or just like if you're near your targets, you can use your Phoenix Dive and cure your allies to get a massive bump of grenade, melee, and class ability energy. Also, this fragment will tie into our last fragment, being Ember of Torches. This will give us Radiant on every charged melee hit. So since we're going to be getting more melee energy from Ember of Searing and other mods we're going to be tying into with our armor mods, and also just constant melee energy after popping our super, this will give us just even more regeneration. But let's say you're not playing with a team with this build, you're playing solo. Instead of Ember of Benevolence, since you have no teammates around you, you can switch to Ember of Singeing for more class ability regen on scorch hits, or Ember of Mercy for more restoration and healing. For the mods of this build, here are the full mods. And just one thing real quick, in all my videos you haven't seen like basically any surges, but since we're going for a damage build with this build, we're not going to be relying totally on our abilities, but instead we're going to be relying on our weapons and abilities with this build. For our helmet, we have Harmonic Siphon. Rapid Solar Weapon Final Blows creates an Orb of Power. This is going to be our main way to create Orbs of Power with this build, just to feed into our surges for more DPS or just more damage towards enemies. For our second mod, we have Ashes to Assets. Gain bonus super energy on grenade kills. This is going to be one of the main ways we're going to be getting our super even faster, and since our Fusion Grenade will be exploding twice, this will easily kill targets. This will give you more super energy. For our last mod, we have Heavy Ammo Finder. Increases the drop chance of heavy ammo on a kill. This is just for more heavy ammo, for more DPS. For our gauntlets, we have a Bolstering Detonation. Grants class ability energy when you cause damage with a grenade. Since we're kind of going to be spamming a grenade with this build, I just want to get more energy towards our class ability, just for more healing with this build. Then we have Momentum Transfer. Causing damage with the grenade reduces your melee cooldown. So every time we throw our Fusion Grenade and get a hit and it explodes on enemies, it will give us more melee energy. Along with the other way around, Impact Induction. Causing damage with a powered melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. So every time we throw our melee or grenade, we're going to get both the energies back. For our chest piece, we have Charged Up. Increases the maximum number of stacks of armor charge you can carry by 1, so going from 3 to 4 stacks, with any resist mods you want. For the boots, we have 3 solar weapon surge mods. You can use any surge mods you want with this build, but since I'm using Dragon's Breath with this build, I went with 3 solar weapon surge mods. For our class item, we have a Bomber. It reduces your grenade cooldown when using your class ability. So every time we use that Healing Rift, we're going to get more grenade energy. Then we have Powerful Attraction. When you use that Healing Rift, it will collect any nearby orbs around you, feeding it more into our surge mods. Then lastly, we have Reaper. After using our class ability, so our Healing Rift, you have 10 seconds to get a kill, which will spawn an Orb of Power. This is the other way we're going to be spawning Orbs of Power with this build. So with these mods, I'm basically tying all into weapon damage, along with some ability regen for getting more class ability from a grenade hit, more melee and grenade energy by just using the opposite ability, and also just more super energy from Ashes to Assets, and also just more grenade energy from just using our class ability. For the artifact of this build, there are several mods I do want to talk about for this solar build. First one being Kindling Trigger. Radiant causes solar weapons to apply Scorch to unscorched combatants. So if you are solo, you could put the Ember of Singeing Fragment on and you'll basically have infinite class ability regeneration. But also this could help to stack up for ignition. You can't put more Scorch onto a target when they're already scorched, so you can't create ignition just by using your weapons. But this just helps get started with the Scorch to get to the ignition. This is also good with Ember of Searing to give us more melee energy constantly by just using our weapons. And from Ember of Searing, we're creating fire sprites, so it will give us more grenade energy as well. Then we have Flint Striker. Rapid solar weapon precision hits and rapid solar weapon final blows grant Radiant. So you could drop Radiant from our Fragments, or the Ember of Torches fragment, but I feel like still with Benevolence, it's always nice just to use your melee near your allies and give them the Radiant as well for then you to regenerate your abilities even faster. And also Radiant is a 25% weapon buff, so it's always nice to use Ember of Torches just to give your allies that weapon buff. But this is definitely one of the best for this season. Next we have Revitalize and Blast. Causing damage with a solar ability weakens champions and bosses for a short duration. So when you're in a boss fight and you're about to pop your well, you could throw a quick Celestial Fire on before, since you're going to be getting that melee back instantly, and you will weaken the target. Weaken is a 15% debuff, so this will just help stack up that damage even more for you and your allies. Then we have Overload Rocket. Since I'm using Dragon's Breath with this build, my Dragon's Breath will then allow me to stun Overload champions. There's also Rays of Precision. While Radiant Solar Precision final blows cause the combatants to ignite. This is really good, especially if you're building into Ignition, which with 2 fusion grenades with our aspect will give us ignition instantly. Then we have Argent Ordnance. Firing a rocket consumes 1 stack of armor charge, granting increased damage and reload speed until you reload or stow your rocket launcher. This is really good just for that extra buff to your rockets and reload speed. For weapons of this build, definitely use solar weapons. I use the Dragon's Breath exotic rocket launcher, and this will dish out a ton of damage in pairing with our abilities, and also it will apply Scorch, give us more melee energy, and it will ignite constantly. But you can use any solar weapons you want, just make sure you have 1 precision weapon that is solar, so then you can get Radiant just by getting precision hits. For stats of the build, get 100 resilience for that 30% damage reduction, then go for high intellect for more supers for your exotic, and then balance out recovery and discipline, since we already have strength covered with Ember of Searing. For the gameplay loop of this build, it is very simple. First, let's talk about your super. When you use your super, well in this case, you'll get infinite regeneration for your melee, grenade, and class ability for 8 seconds. And this is right after popping your well. And all this is from the exotic helmet, the Apotheosis Veil. This is amazing for burst damage on a boss. Because of this and switching weapons throughout the damage phase, I did 6 million damage. This was in the new Warlord's Ruin Dungeon final boss. So with this build, it's really just trying to get your super as much as possible. That is why I'm running 80 intellect with this build. And also Ash's assets for more super energy when gaining kill with your grenade. This is from one of our armor mods. We already mentioned our grenade, but let's talk about it a bit more. Our grenade will explode twice, doing twice the damage it usually does from our aspect Touch of Flame. Our grenade will automatically scorch targets, and when these targets die from Scorch, it will give us more melee energy and may spawn a fire sprite. This is from our fragment Ember of Searing. Our grenades will ignite targets in just 2 throws, thanks to our Ember of Ashes fragment. Like we said, our grenades will give us more super energy from getting kills from our Ashes that Assets armor mod. It will also give us class ability energy from the Bolstering Detonation armor mod. We'll also get even more melee energy from the Momentum Transfer armor mod. But let's talk about our melee. It will automatically scorch targets on hit and give us Radiant uncharged melee hits, and this is from our Ember of Torches fragment, which when near allies, you will get even more melee, grenade, and class ability energy since you're making your teammates Radiant. And this is from the Ember of Benevolence fragment. It will also give us more grenade energy on melee hits from our Impact Induction armor mod. We will use this melee on bosses as well, and cycling between grenade and weapon or grenade and melee damage for constant ignitions on bosses. Let's talk about our class ability next. This will be our Healing Rift or Phoenix Dive. This is your choice. This will give us more grenade energy on activation from our Bomber armor mod. This will also allow us to pick up nearby orbs from powerful attraction and allows us to spawn an orb of power when gaining a kill after using our class ability from our Reaper armor mod. For armor charges, we are building into surges, or you can build into grenade kickstart for more grenade energy. And the surges are for damage, and if you're not going for full damage and you just want to have more survivability and just more abilities in general for ad clear, you can switch to grenade kickstart. But as a summary of this build, spam your abilities when needed. Then when you need high DPS on a boss or a champion, you could pop your super, which is well, and spam your abilities for 8 seconds. If you use Dragon's Breath right, you can use it as a damage over time weapon just like Anarchy. So you can use the Dragon's Breath and then switch to other weapons to do damage, while the Dragon's Breath is constantly igniting and then exploding. and using Dragon's Breath with the ability spam from your exotic, you will do a ton of damage. Let's talk about the rotation of just what you're going to be doing for damage. What I usually do for damage is I shoot the Dragon's Breath first, let it start that damage over time, and while that's recharging to reload its ammo, I would start spamming abilities from our exotic helmet after using your super. So first shoot your rocket, then pop well, and then use your abilities constantly, and then switch back to your rocket when it's done. And after that, you use a fusion rifle or a sniper depending on what boss you're going against as a secondary weapon for damage. For a sniper, I know Succession is very good, and for a fusion rifle, I know the new Strand fusion rifle from the season is really good, and also I use Riptide for damage since it's going to be freezing, and the freezing also does even more damage. But this build is very fun for dungeons and raids and will allow you to do a ton of burst damage in the first 8 seconds of a boss fight. Since Starfire's big nerf a bit ago, this exotic definitely stands up to take its place, even though it's not as strong as OG Starfire, but it's a good start. That's it for the build. Again, I really do enjoy this build for raids and dungeons and other hard content where you need well and high burst damage. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy this build as well. My next video will be over the Solar Hunter since I'm eager to get some crazy builds going on that class. Thanks for watching and consider even subscribing if you enjoyed or found this useful. Have a great day and I'll see you in the next one.